Oh, well, geez Louise, that was really silly. Sorry, my home studio needs an upgrade for some stuff. Hello, howdy, welcome back, folks. It has been far, far too long. Today is June 20th, 2019. This is episode 81 of Escaping Dystopia. How many signs of fascism do you need? I'm not sure. So we're going to talk about some stuff. Like I said, it has been a pretty minute since I last spoke with you. I think it's been about a month and a half or so, a little bit longer. My personal schedule, it's been summer season, and I decided to play some softball. So that's been eating up my Wednesday nights, and with the 3 kiddos, it's always fun to find time. The world has continued to move on, so we'll do some updates. I'm not going to try and cover all the news from the last 6 weeks. We're just going to pick up where we're going. It's been a weird news week for the last little while. Things are odd in a number of ways, and I think everybody's starting to feel it, and there's certainly a lot of stress. We're not going to worry about that so much. We're just going to go and talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. So the way we do things here on the show is a little bit straightforward. I think we change it all the time anyway. But I'm going to run through what I think are some of the big stories for this week, and then we'll do pretty much the straight news first, and then do a little bit more opinionated stuff as we go through the second time. So if you are interested, you can just wait a little while, and then we'll start talking. And always feel free to hop in, although we'll see how much I can interact, because my phone is kind of just perched precariously after my tripod thing broke. So we need to go and get a new one. But we'll do that not right now, because I want to do a show tonight. So, Spaceship Earth update. It's getting hot. Things are melting. And we'll talk about this a little bit more on the second run through, but see some pictures. You can go look this up. There's been some massive, ridiculous high temperatures in the north of the planet. And lots and lots and lots of melting. And things are happening much faster at a higher rate than they had thought was going to happen. We'll talk about that some more later. The immigration update. There has been a debate over this last week whether or not we can call what's going on down at the border concentration camps. There have been, I believe now, 24 reported deaths of detainees in custody. A number of children have also died. We'll talk about that a little bit more on the second run through. The Mueller report update. There's been no significant action in either House of Congress after the release of the Mueller report. There was the letter, of course, to the Attorney General from Mueller saying that he didn't agree with the Attorney General's characterization whatsoever of the report, and in fact reiterated that it did not clear the president and that he could not charge the president. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but there's not much more to say. The Iran situation. Over the last couple weeks, we've seen there was an attack on a couple oil tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, which is the big threat of a war with Iran, that will shut those down. And then in the last couple days, there was a drone that was shot down off the coast of Iran as well. There's a bit more disputes about the information on that. So far, no more significant action has been taken other than some blustery words by both sides. We'll talk a little bit more about the analysis later. North Korea. Nothing's happening there. There was a big explosion there the other day. Some people thought it might have been a test, but that doesn't look likely now. Currently, the president of China is visiting. He hasn't been there in about 15 years, I believe. He's going there first before meeting with President Trump and others at the G20. There were, if you'll recall, last week some threats from the president of the United States that if Xi didn't go to talk to Trump, there would be more tariffs. Xi, of course, kind of laughed and said, I was planning on going anyway, but okay, sure, whatever. Sorry. We'll talk about that stuff in the second half. The Mexico tariff threat. We saw both when the president came out and said he had a secret agreement. He waved around a piece of paper. There was some photographs taken of that piece of paper, and there was some analysis of the text that you could read through that. A few days later, the Mexican consulate, I believe, or someone released the actual agreement. It was nothing like the president had claimed. Basically, in 45 days, if they determine that Mexico hasn't done enough to solve this problem, we're going to go through this whole thing again. This is a very difficult situation to deal with, diplomatically, while also trying to do the new USMCA, where the U.S. is first, as opposed to the previous NAFTA agreement, where North America was first. That makes it superior in the eyes of some. Today, Arthur Laffer, he's an economist, he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom for espousing the philosophy and seeing it put into practice that if we merely give more money to the wealthiest people, that will benefit everyone. This has repeatedly been shown to not work. However, many people who are extremely wealthy, like the president, really appreciate this, and he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom for Arthur Laffer today. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And I'm also going to do, near the end, a little bit of a discussion about how to determine what racism is. It's one of the things that you can use the model to do. A stripped down version of the model, so we'll have a little bit of a discussion about that. So, back to the top. Now that we've chased everybody away. It's all good. I kind of do this just for my own sanity. It's a joke, people. You're supposed to be laughing. So the melting is a little bit out of control. We've seen this before, and if you'll see those, and you've seen a number of graphs, and there's some really good data visualization stuff out there on the change of each year, right, of the temperature curve that we've seen. This year, it looks like the Arctic temperatures have been 30, 40 degrees higher than normal, and the melting that has resulted has also been higher. There's a decent chance, and this is not a particularly warm year. We're not in an El Nino cycle, and we're not in a solar maximum cycle. There's some sunspot cycles that people think might have some effect on this, but again, we're not at like a solar maximum or at an El Nino, and we're seeing these temperatures. So one of the things about how chaotic systems progress is that you don't see this like straight line, right, of going like a curve like this. You see this kind of, but you have this, a slope, right? But you have a pattern that's chaotic, but over time you see this. And so that's how you see these spikes, and that's what it looks like we're seeing this year. In the melting in the Arctic is a pretty serious spike. There's been some pretty dramatic pictures of some of this stuff that's going on. So, yeah, we need to address the climate change thing. It's real. I don't know what else to tell you on that, folks. That's a real thing that we should deal with. The immigration update, man, this has been so tough to watch and to deal with. So there's this a discussion now, because this was brought up by a member of Congress, and talking about both the number of deaths that we've seen from this change of enforcement style, of trying to hold every person who tries to come to claim asylum in the United States. We also saw actually the statistics now for refugees for this last year in 2018, and it turns out that Canada, actually our neighbors to the north, with roughly 1/10 of the population of the United States, were able to successfully integrate more refugees into their society than the United States was this last year. That's basically the state of California being more than everybody else if they were allowed to, which I don't think would actually be too difficult if there wasn't such a anti-refugee, anti-immigrant sentiment coming from the White House and the executive branch, who has control over all this. So it's been very effective on that side. The concentration camps. So there's been a number of people talking about this, and a lot of, particularly historians who follow this stuff, and that's been kind of the discussion this week. Is that's what these are. And when you take these undesirables and you put them all in the same place, in a same place that's particularly unpleasant. That's what it is, and the argument that I'm hearing very, very, is that, if you just give us more money to make these concentration camps nicer, then everything will be fine. The problem here is the concentration camps in and of themselves, and that they exist. It's going to be interesting to see, because this is not being ignored per se. It's being poo-pooed. Oh, we can't say words that make people uncomfortable. But the road that we're on here, so this is why, again, I started wasting my time in my basement doing this. Because it is, and that's, I mean, 2 years ago, if we talked about some of the stuff that we're talking about now, I mean, like the deportation force, the president was literally, is literally threatening that they're going to go house to house and get people. That's happening. That happened this week. That was one of those things like, oh, he's not going to ever... And, oh, no, I'm just going after the bad hombres. I'll take care of the dreamers. All just ridiculous lies. Total lies. And now we see that now. And it's actually started that... Oh, I didn't mention that. But the president started his campaign this week. Not that it's ever stopped. But there's The Daily Show did a good job of relaying him using the exact same lines that he had used previously. So... we have concentration camps on the border. It's going to be summertime soon, so we're gonna hear some more horror stories. Just be ready for that. So, Mueller report update. The president, this was a couple weeks ago. He was in an interview because he's feeling a little bold, right after being not charged with a crime since he's president, and the guy who was investigating him would refuse to charge a president. Even if he shot somebody in the face, apparently. But anyway, he talked about the idea that he would gladly help and take, again, foreign assistance in an election. Take dirt from an opponent, take, somebody emails, whatever you got. Basically, giving the green light to foreign governments to attack his political opponents in order to gain favor with him and keep him in power. This is, of course, pretty disturbing because a lot of Republicans have been kind of lying to themselves about what happened in 2016 to the degree that anything strange happened. And so when you have somebody who's, after being accused of, orchestrating and colluding, and he very clearly did, their campaign did collude with the Russians. They couldn't charge the criminal conspiracy because of a couple technicalities. But so to then come out and say, oh yeah, I totally would do that. Anybody would do that. And everybody would be like, you can't do that. That's illegal. Like literally, like the Federal Election Commission lady had to tweet, like, no, you can't do that. That's illegal. One of the issues that they had with charging the Trump campaign in the first place was establishing that there was a material value to what WikiLeaks did and the work the Russians did and hacking the DNC and providing those emails. And because they didn't really want to go through that for some odd reason, because I think they thought that when people would read the second part, they'd be like, well, that's obstruction of justice, and that's obstruction of justice, and he's got to go, but that's not what's happened. So, I don't think that there's even, especially among older Republicans like Robert Mueller, an understanding of what the Republican Party has become. And we've seen it over the last couple months. The Iran situation. So, all of the adults in the room, as it were, regarding the presidential moderating the president, are gone. And now we've got Bolton and Pompeo basically saying what to do, which is why we're seeing this. I mean, this would not be something that would be happening because everything that's gone on here has been a direct result of refusing to negotiate. It's we had a deal, right, with Iran that was directly speaking to all of this stuff. And then the president backs out of it. And now he's trying to reinforce it this last week. And they've done this while putting new sanctions on Iran. And the strategy that Iran is taking, by the way, and this is important to note, because the Trump administration pulled out of the deal and basically said, you know what, Iran, you can't sell oil anywhere in the world. Anybody does, we're going to do our thing, and we're kind of serious about this, so we're going to... And this was, again... The whole point is to put the pressure on them to bring them back to the table. However, they already came back to the table. They sat down at the table. They negotiated a deal at the table. They signed a deal at the table. We picked the rug up under the table, flipped it over, and said, go fuck yourselves, let's have a deal. Who's going to come back to that table? So what the plan is now, and I think this is kind of what they're doing, is basically they're going to call Trump's bluff. They're going to do it just flat out. It's going to be like, you know what, bring it. Because I think everybody understands now that he can't concentrate on something long enough to actually follow through. And it's the dynamic, and I think this has been the dynamic, because I don't think Trump liked it when he had Mattis and Kelly and some other people who were a little bit more moderating influences on him, and he felt like he had to be the more aggressive person, because he wants to go to war, he wants to shoot, he definitely wants to blow things up. But now he gets to be the voice of reason against Pompeo and Bolton. But I think that Bolton definitely can manipulate him into a place where he is now. So we shot down, or we had one of our drones, like a big one, like an expensive one, shot down that was spying on Iran. So they shot it down. There's some question about where it was. My guess, it was probably someplace close, and they're like, that's too close, we're going to shoot it down. And we were like, no, he's totally fine, I'm swinging my arms, and if you get... whatever. So we saw that happen, right? And then the president comes out, and he has this thing where he's like, they obviously they didn't mean to do that, because this has been a red line that he had drawn, that if they do anything, you're dead forever, and we're going to wipe you off the face of the map forever, because and he's made those threats. In this context, like recently, basically, and all this stuff. So they are like, well, because what will happen if the sanctions continue like this is they can't keep going. I don't think. I think the economy, especially after they've just gone through all of this, and then we're ready to come back and join the world, and then they have everything pulled out from under them, because. I don't know if it was like Adelson buying them or not. I don't know. But the way their approach here has been ridiculous, and it's been designed to push it towards war. And that's what Iran's doing, is basically like, you know what, let's do it. You guys want to do it? They're going to call the bluff. So we'll see that over the next couple weeks, I think. Which means it's going to be interesting, because we have a dotard in the Oval Office, and just some really, really war-hungry folks around him, particularly one who has the power to really push for this. So this is a real situation now, although we'll see if the president plays true to form and talks a bunch of smack and then folds like he does every time, and then his biggest complaint is that people note that he folded. North Korea, like I said, nothing done. There was an explosion the other day. If they do something big, but again, they've already fired off missiles afterwards, and Trump was like, nah, I'm not worried about it. Like, but you said they weren't going to do that. It's tough to watch all this incompetence and then keep going on. And then we had the tariff threat. So we saw the actual agreement, and basically it's saying, if we don't like what you're doing in a little while, then we're going to stop it. And it looks like there's been a little bit of a response. But again, this is the same kind of thing. If you go into a business and say, if you don't pay me, I'm gonna blow up your business, and then you stand outside and keep yelling that for a little while, and people are like, you know what, I don't think I want to shop here. This guy's gonna... That has an effect on your business, whether or not, it's a legitimate thing or not. Those are mafia tactics. And I actually had this discussion the other day, and just trying to get this something for nothing, it'd be a shame if anything happened to your free trade agreement that's already on the books. So, and this is the thing, too. This is kind of the whole point of NAFTA, is that you don't have these kind of threats or these kind of continual, trade wars. We're in a full-blown trade war with China now, by the way. Nobody wins trade wars. This is something that we've tried to discuss before. So anyway, the tariff threat came down, and then it was about buying stuff, and then it wasn't. We saw the agreement, claimed it was the greatest agreement ever, got to read it, saw that it wasn't. It was an agreement to have some more meetings. So, this is a tough one, man. So one of the reasons that I started writing about politics and doing analysis, I do data and reporting and analysis and things and models and whatnot for a living. So I bought this basement. I did an analysis like 10 years ago on the tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts. This is talking about Arthur Laffer. It's called the Laffer curve. This is the notion, again, you've probably heard about this somewhere along the lines oh, you know, taxes are so high and burdensome, if we just cut them, the resulting economic activity from all that extra money will generate so much that we'll actually make more money by taking less percentage of the money. This has never worked in reality, and the way that it's always been done is they cut the taxes on the freest money, on the cheapest money. Because it started with cutting on capital gains taxes, which is big money items, right? Or like non-tangible unearned income, right? So you buy a piece of art for $1 million, and then you sell it. Oh, so bad. For $2 million, right? And then you've made $1 million because you're such a business genius. What happened? Yeah, like I said, so earlier I was trying to figure out what happened with my my thing. My other thing did a thing. And I actually kind of broke my phone a little bit. And it doesn't even work anymore. So, anyway, here I am. But, this is some pretty seriously professional stuff that you're seeing here. I don't even know what it's at now. Alright. Who's watching right now? See, when it does that, like, it loses total control over what you can do. And I can't even see stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so we'll wrap things up. Getting a little warm down here anyway. But anyway, Art Laffer, this idea that you can cut taxes for the rich and everybody's going to benefit has never worked. It can't work. Mathematically, it's just not there. And they keep trying to do it. And that's what happened with the Bush tax cuts the Trump tax cuts. And they did this massive tax cut for businesses that was supposed to be bonuses and money and didn't show up. And now revenue for companies declined by like 40% this last year. I actually did this analysis. I've got this in Excel, and it's 40%. It was from 292 million to 202 million. That was corporate income tax revenue this last year. Individual income tax revenue went up and replaced it because what they did was shifted the tax burden from companies that are generally owned by very wealthy people to workers, particularly workers in high income tax states, because they capped the tax deduction you could get from income tax. Anyway, so they shifted that burden to people. The economic activity did not replace it, so our deficit went up again. And this is the guy got a medal today for this bullshit. So this was a rough day for me. I'm not going to do the racism curve discussion. We'll talk about that another time, because after I fix things and... Sorry. What do you expect for free, folks? All right, have a good night, and that's it for tonight. Peace out, y'all.